DestinationMarc.
Hey guys, how's it going? Marcelo here. It was a certain little purple dragon that once said, for every good battle, you need a good adversary. And I don't think there's a villain more perfect for Crash Bandicoot than his creator, Dr. Neo Cortex. Ruthless, conniving, intelligent, and commanding, Cortex was hellbent on getting revenge for those that mocked and laughed at him by brainwashing an army of mutant animals to take over the world. If those adjectives I use don't seem to describe the Doctor you know in today's games, that'd be because Cortex wasn't always the comedic butt monkey he's known as now. This is a tale of two sides of the same face, one riddled with tragedy, and one painted over with comedy. Join me today as we take a deep dive and analyze the portrayals of Dr. Neo Periwinkle Cortex. As fate would have it, Cortex technically has two backstories. I say technically because the one we're going to dive into right now was established during the Woolly Wombat days of the first Crash game's development, but a few tiny details from this story have in fact leaked into the final game we all know today. In Cortex's first backstory, he was literally born into the family business, becoming a circus clown and ridiculed by his family and the audience alike. Tired of it all by the age of 5, he became orphaned when a freak explosion took out his family. An explosion, if it wasn't obvious, that he caused. All of this comes from the Crash Dev Bible, which I've talked about in my iceberg video, so I'm going to breeze through this part. After his family was wiped out, he enrolled in high school, met Brio, blew up his high school, entered college, all while still being made fun of for his looks and nerdy demeanor, and then later into their adult years, the two traveled around the world, still in search of knowledge and looking for a place to hide away and begin concocting sinister plans. That's when they settled in on the Wumpa Islands and got to work on their most devious devices yet, the Cortex Vortex and the Evolvo Ray. But not before they'd caused the radioactive explosion in Chernobyl. Unrelated, just thought I'd mention it. Missed this one while making the iceberg video. Anyway, most of this was ultimately thrown out by the time Woolly Wombat became Crash Bandicoot, but Cortex's clownish appearance, friendship with Brio, and thirst for revenge against everyone who mocked him are the biggest mainstays. It almost makes you feel sorry for the Mad Doctor, seeing him with heavy bags under his eyes, likely from countless sleepless nights abducting animals and building his machines, his malnourished body and crooked posture. It all adds up perfectly for a Frankenstein's monster-type story, but is drenched in very dark cruelty. Now that's where Cortex started, but when Crash Twinsanity released, and yes, we'll be coming back here multiple times, he got a slightly revamped backstory, flashback to and beautifully narrated here by Cortex himself. In this story, Cortex, Brio, and Engine all grew up together in the Academy of Evil, learning the ways to become the most vile of villains. Funnily enough, Cortex was still chastised in this telling as well, the only difference being that from Cortex's perspective, he believed he was adored by his peers. He was as snarky and slimy as villains in training could be, and by the age of 8 he finished a prototype of the Evolvo Ray, which Brio would later perfect, sort of, by the events of Crash 1. Much shorter backstory, but the element of ridicule is still very much present here as well. Only this time around, Cortex was shaped into something a bit more comedic because of it. And that's because the fuel of wanting to succeed is much more clearly shown to take precedent over staying bitter and focusing on revenge. Even though that's where it started, this is what it turned into. Now with that, let's talk about how Cortex was portrayed in the series' different eras. In the original trilogy, he was, as I said, ruthless and commanding. There wasn't much insight into Cortex's thoughts and feelings in the first game, since gameplay was at the forefront, but it is clear when he says,
"This time I shall reign triumphant," that
revenge is what's driving him here. After Cortex switched voice actors from the late Brendan O'Brien to Clancy Brown for Crash 2, his cold and calculative demeanor really began to show, as Clancy's role as Lex Luthor helped redefine Cortex's personality from generic bad guy doing evil things to intelligent gaslighter keeping his friends close and his enemies closer, having ditched Brio for Engine and attempting to convince Crash to bring him crystals to power up his new and improved Cortex Vortex. Just listen to how Clancy delivers these lines.
If we don't have any friends left on the surface, then we need to find an enemy.
Well. If it isn't Crash Bandicoot, welcome. I apologize for the crude means used to bring you here, but I rather expect a written invitation would have been turned down. Remember, the world is counting on you.
Cortex is now much more manipulative and convincing to those he speaks to. And it was here, unfortunately, where parents started to complain that the big spooky villain was too spooky. So ever since then, there was a change taking place. A change that never stopped and morphed the character into something else as the franchise continued. But for now, let's stay focused on Clancy's take on Cortex, because the change really started to show in the next 3 console titles. Crash 3 introduced Uka Uka, also voiced by Clancy, and it was revealed that Cortex was working for him all along. Yeah. And because Uka's much more threatening, that essentially makes Cortex his whipping boy. And in these cutscenes, you can clearly see that beyond the classy Shakespearean manner of speaking that Cortex still retains, a worried, tired, slightly more comical presence makes itself known within his personality.
Crash, crash, crash. Why must you always muck in my mud? I know we've had a few unfortunate setbacks and failed. Tiny was a good fellow. He hated everyone and everything, but a good heart nonetheless. Please be more reasonable with my minions next time.
At this point, Cortex's priorities have strayed away from revenge against his peers and are now solely focused on winning against Crash. By the next canonical title, Wrath of Cortex, the Doctor is ready to dole out exactly that, his wrath. Cortex is fed up with losing, and in this installment, he actually manages to do what he couldn't before. He succeeds in mutating and brainwashing Crunch Bandicoot into doing his bidding. But aside from all that, take a look at these new villain interactions and just listen to Cortex.
Crash Bandicoot, my old nemesis. How the heck are you? Still gathering crystals? Old habits die hard, don't they? Well, here we are again. I wouldn't necessarily call this irony, but don't you find it a little odd that we keep meeting under these same world domination circumstances?
His manner of speaking is different. It's eerily calm for pretty much most of the game. This take on Cortex's voice, along with Uka's more bombastic tone, was the direct result of all the parent complaints. Now Cortex isn't threatening, he just wants his petty win against Crash and Coco. And by Crash Nitro Kart, Clancy's last game as the voice of Cortex, the dude looks so done. The bags under his eyes are straight black. He looks fed up with pretty much everyone. Just look at how he talks to Tiny in the opening.
Bandicoots! I can squash bandicoots.
Yes, I know you can, Tiny. But you failed so many times.
He is tired beyond belief, and even though this is a spin-off, it still manages to put a cap on how this original take on Cortex has evolved. Even the voice Clancy's doing for the Doctor here just sounds off. Not in a bad way, but again, it's noticeably different than from how it sounded in Crash 2. This take on Cortex never caught a break, and ultimately ended off just wanting out. And wouldn't you know it, but the next iteration of the Doc would undergo much of the same. Crash Twinsanity holds a lot of firsts for the series. It was the first semi-open world Crash game, it was the first to be written as a comedy, and it was the first title since Crash 1 to recast Cortex. Now voiced by Lex Lane, to say Cortex went through a bit of an overhaul would be an understatement. He's much more comedic now, very over the top, with just the right balance of sinister and flamboyant, which is how Lex himself describes his portrayal of the Doc in this interview with Jump Button. There's one word to describe this iteration of Cortex, which pretty much defines his entire personality from here on out: pathetic. Underneath Cortex's tough face and determination to win is a clumsy, whiny, defeated, pathetic little man who still gets ridiculed by everyone. That doesn't slow him down or stop him though. He still has zany plans for world domination, and plenty of them still involve mutating and brainwashing animals.
Take that, everyone who says the Titans games are nothing like the originals.
But the fact still stands that Twinsanity's cynical, satirical take on Cortex, as well as the series in general, never went away after this, and influenced even the post-hiatus games. There's just something so compelling about how now each game before the hiatus includes copious amounts of Cortex torture, making him look meek, ridiculous, and again, pathetic. And yet to balance that out, gone is Cortex's intelligent Shakespearean dialogue, and in are the innuendos, tirades, incessant screaming, and jokes like this.
How long have you had that in your pants?
T.T. Oxford and Radical's iteration of Cortex ramped up the Doctor's campiness, and that tone was the last we remembered from the series during the hiatus. So when Ensign was announced and we saw the cast listing, consisting of mostly Radical-era voice actors, the question arose: can the Radical-era cast recreate that Naughty Dog-era feel? Thankfully, the answer was yes. Sort of. Let me explain. One of the biggest questions we had for Insane was, how was Lex Lane gonna sound as Clancy Brown's version of Cortex? Well, if we check the Crash 2 hologram cutscenes, he's actually very good. Right before Insane, we got just a little more of Cortex's usual comedic shenanigans in Skylanders Imaginators, but here Lex really reached deep down and gave an amazing, sinister performance.
Bring me the crystals, Crash. That is all I will say for now. We will speak again. The planets will align shortly, all 13 of them, and this will create a power great enough to rip the Earth apart.
If we don't have any friends left on the surface, then we'll need to find an enemy.
However, here's where the sorta comes in. I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks this, but do any of you guys hear the consciousness of the performance? As in, Lex was conscious of the fact that he had to sound like Clancy in order to invoke the correct feel, lest the fans get disappointed? Listen back to some of these deliveries and let me know if what I'm saying makes sense, and if you can hear it too. In any case, Insane managed to balance out Cortex's personality. Lex succeeds in bringing him back to Clancy's level of threatening, but the comical side of him comes out in the little details. The way he laughs, the faces he makes while Uka's talking, the infamous big bags of ice joke, which they further accentuated in the animation. Kudos to them for getting away with that. Cortex is now a blend of the two previous iterations, and this would be further expanded on in Crash 4. Taking place sometime after Crash 3, we get to see the villains escape their interdimensional prison, and Cortex and Tropy reluctantly team up to build a device that can take them to any dimension they want. They don't really know how to get back to their dimension, however, so they just punch holes in reality until they can find their way back, causing havoc as they do so. Now here's where something interesting begins to happen. Cortex looks tired. He's tired of losing. The way he addresses Engine and Brio is very evocative of the way he addressed Tiny in Nitro Kart.
Right, yeah, fine, sure. Have fun with your ray guns or whatever.
When I said the next iteration would undergo much of the same, I meant it. Cortex wants to win, but more than that, he's afraid of losing to Crash so many times that they'll just continue to go round and round like this forever, an endless cycle of determination driving him to scheme, and failure bringing him right back down after Crash comes and thwarts his plans. Again, that word comes up, pathetic. That's how he feels, and he wants out. To his satisfaction, that is what he gets when he's banished to the end of the universe, but as fate would have it, far more sinister forces keep roping him back in. What's very interesting to me in the comedic era of Cortex, especially in the post-hiatus games, is how he views himself, and how others view him as well. As previously stated, Cortex never really let the events in his troubled Twinsanity past get the better of him. He's so egotistical, he thought everyone revered him for his genius. And even though he becomes more noticeably tired by Crash 4, that doesn't mean he's not having fun still trying to destroy that Bandicoot. He even outright states it and bears repeating. But whereas Cortex had a healthy crew of trustworthy followers in the original trilogy, many of them just kind of stop following him to do their own thing in later games, and some of them even straight up backstab him. Brio continues to bicker with him in Mind Over Mutant, Uka and Cortex take turns usurping each other in the Radical titles, Madame Amberly still makes fun of him as an adult just as much as she did when he was a kid, but the most interesting and prominent rivalry in recent games has to be the beef between Cortex and Entropy. These two do not like each other, and as early as Insane, we get inklings of that.
Uka and Dr. Cortex have sent me to end this little charade.
Just look at that little dismissive gesture Tropy does with his eyes when mentioning Cortex. It's subtle details like that that make me love these characters. Of course, the most overt example of this can be seen in Crash 4. In one of Coco's flashback tapes, which take place between the events of Crash 1 and 2, Tropy was already trying to get into contact with Cortex. But after ignoring his call, Cortex mocks Tropy, in turn revealing that the cause of their rivalry seems to stem from their opinions on each other's respective fields of science. And well after Entropy is gone and backstabbed Cortex in the main story, he has an interesting reaction when Coco calls him a bad guy.
Our bad guys had to change a heart too.
Bad guy?
This is compelling. After all he's done, after everything he put Crash and Coco through, he not only fails to see himself as a villain, he's dejectedly offended by the remark. And I think I know why. This is the last aspect I have to talk about, and that is Cortex's relationship with Crash. It's not touched on much, but when it is, it's made blatantly clear that Cortex did at one time legitimately love him like a son. It's said in Twinsanity,
Crash, I've been like a father to you. I created you, nursed you, tried to destroy you.
It's reinforced in Crash 4 many times over.
I seem to be developing a connection with the subject. A fatherly... wait.
Did I hit the wrong button? It looks like that's the birthday alarm. Happy birthday, subject. Oh, it seems like only yesterday subject was nibbling wampa scraps out of my hand.
And in general, Cortex was still somewhat of a caring person back then, even asking Crash if he's sometimes too hard on Brio. And again in Twinsanity, Cortex is shown to love Nina, even if he dishes out some tough love now and again. At the same time, back in Crash 4, it was right after Crash escaped that Cortex's bitter side really came out. He even tried to gaslight Coco into believing Crash left her all alone, briefly attempting to turn her against him, proving that those Clancy-esque attributes still reside deep within him. If there's anything that's proven time and time again, it's that anyone Cortex cares about and decides to confide in will either mock him, leave him, or at some point betray him, all plastered over with a cynical paintbrush. And that's the comedically tragic tale of Cortex. A character once respected, feared, and a survival of physical and emotional abuse has now become a pathetically funny jackass still privy to ridicule. And the cherry on top is the abundance of clown outfits Cortex gets in the post-hiatus games, just to further twist the proverbial knife. If there was one quote that could fit this evil scientist, it's most definitely this one. I used to think that my life was a tragedy, but now I realize it's a comedy. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this character analysis, don't forget to check out the one that I did on Coco. And if you want to see more, be sure to subscribe, like the video and hit the bell, and I'll see you next time. Until then, I'm Mark, and take care.